Snowflakes, secrets and stolen glances. Jerry Yan and Tong Liya spotted shopping together in Switzerland. The crisp Swiss winter air was already enough to take a person's breath away. But when Jerry Yan and Tong Liya were spotted strolling through the luxury shopping district of Zurich during their vacation, even the snow seemed to pause mid-air. For years, their relationship had been whispered about in the shadows of the Asian entertainment industry. Quiet nods, subtle glances, and the rare joint appearance at industry events. But here, far from home, the couple seemed to have shed their layers of secrecy, moving through the mall with a warmth that could melt the ice off every rooftop in the city. What followed was an afternoon that fans still can't stop talking about. An encounter that was as cinematic as a winter romance film and as intimate as a love letter written in the snow. It was late afternoon when a group of Chinese tourists stepped into the Bahnhofstrasse district, Switzerland's most famous shopping street, where luxury brands sparkle like diamonds behind pristine glass. Among the crowd, one woman froze, her gaze locking on a tall man in a charcoal cashmere coat. There was no mistaking the sculpted jawline, the slightly tousled hair that seemed made for shampoo commercials. It was Jerry Yan. Beside him walked a woman in an elegant beige trench coat. Her black beret tilted just enough to give her a Parisian flair. Even behind her oversized sunglasses, her delicate features were unmistakable. Tong Liya. The fan who spotted them swore her hands shook so hard she almost dropped her phone. But she didn't scream or rush forward. Something about the scene demanded quiet respect. Scene 2. Walking like they owned the winter. The couple moved in unison, their steps perfectly matched, like a dance they'd been practicing for years. Tong Liya's gloved hand brushed against Jerry's from time to time, and each time, his lips curled into a faint smile, the kind that said everything without a single word. They stopped at a chocolatier's window first. Jerry leaned down slightly, saying something in her ear that made her laugh, that soft camera-shy smile she only gives in unguarded moments. Then, without hesitation, he opened the door for her, guiding her inside with his hand gently on her back. From the street, a few lucky onlookers pressed closer to the glass, watching them browse through artisan truffles and candied oranges. Jerry picked up a heart-shaped chocolate, examined it, and then held it up to her lips with a teasing eyebrow raise. She shook her head, laughing, but took a bite anyway. Scene 3, the luxury stop that stole the show. After a short stroll, they entered a boutique that made fans' jaws drop. Bucherer, one of Switzerland's most prestigious jewelers. Inside, witnesses said the atmosphere shifted. Jerry, who is often seen as playful and aloof in public, became completely focused. He examined a glass display of watches, occasionally glancing at Tong Liya as if silently asking for her opinion. She, on the other hand, wandered toward a case of necklaces, her fingertips grazing the glass. A store attendant brought out a delicate platinum pendant with a snowflake-shaped diamond centerpiece. Tong Liya held it up against her chest, looking at Jerry for approval. He didn't say a word, just walked over, took it gently from her hand, and fastened it around her neck himself. The attendant swore she saw him whisper, "Perfect," before stepping back to admire her. Scene 4. Fans become accidental paparazzi. By now, the couple had been recognized by at least a dozen people. But rather than chaos, there was an unspoken agreement among the onlookers. No screaming, no interruptions, just quiet photos and videos from a respectful distance. One clip went viral within hours. Jerry and Tong Liya, walking hand in hand through the mall's open-air atrium, snow drifting down gently from above. The camera caught him pausing to brush a stray snowflake from her beret. His fingers lingering just a second too long for it to be anything but love. The background music from a nearby cafe, a slow jazz rendition of La Vie en Rose, seemed almost scripted. Scene 5. The coffee shop interlude. After an hour of shopping, they ducked into a small coffee shop tucked in a corner of the district. They chose a table by the window, where the view spilled out into the snowy street. Tong Liya removed her gloves, rubbing her hands together before wrapping them around a steaming mug of hot chocolate. Jerry, meanwhile, leaned back in his chair, his coat still draped over his shoulders, eyes locked on her as though there was nothing else in the world worth looking at. A fan sitting 2 tables away later described the scene. It felt like watching the ending of a romance film. She was talking and he just kept nodding, smiling. Not the big celebrity smile but a small, private one. At one point, he reached across the table and held her hand without even breaking eye contact. Scene 6. The bag that sparked 1,000 theories. When they finally stepped back out into the cold, Jerry was carrying a shopping bag from a luxury baby boutique, BB Suisse. Theories exploded online within minutes. Were they shopping for a friend's baby? A relative's child? Or was it something more? Tong Liya noticed the curious glances and simply smiled, linking her arm through Jerry's. Whatever the reason, they weren't offering explanations. The mystery only made the internet buzz louder. Scene 7. The departure that felt like a movie ending. As the sun dipped lower, painting the snow in shades of gold and rose, the couple walked toward the parking area where a sleek black Mercedes waited. Before getting in, Jerry paused, pulled Tong Liya close, and kissed the top of her head. A fan standing nearby captured the moment perfectly. The steam of their breath mingling in the cold air, the faint crunch of snow underfoot, the hush of a city that seemed to be holding its breath for them. And then, they were gone, leaving behind a trail of whispers, camera flashes, and the faint echo of what just might be the most romantic public sighting of their relationship to date. The internet's reaction. Within hours, social media lit up with posts tagged #Jerry and Tong Liya Switzerland and #WinterRomance in Zurich. Fans flooded comment sections with poetic declarations. They look like a Nicholas Sparks novel come to life. Not even the Swiss Alps are this beautiful. That baby boutique bag. I'm screaming. Industry insiders noted that Jerry and Tong Liya's ability to stay so composed and private while being so openly affectionate was rare in the world of celebrity romance. The silent statement. Neither Jerry nor Tong Liya released any statement about the sighting, the baby bag or the pendant. But in a way they didn't have to. Sometimes love speaks loudest in the smallest gestures. A brushed snowflake, a shared chocolate, a hand held a little too long in the cold. The late afternoon sun poured through the glass ceiling of Bahnhofstrasse Mall, casting a warm golden glow over the luxury boutiques. Tourists bustled about, carrying glossy shopping bags, while soft classical music drifted from a nearby cafe. It was the kind of place where the wealthy came to shop quietly, away from flashing cameras, or so everyone thought. At precisely 3:47 p.m., a moment happened that would shake the internet for the next 72 hours. A young fan named Lena, sipping her latte near the second-floor escalator, looked up and froze. Jerry Yen, in a casual black sweater, dark jeans, and a baseball cap, was stepping out of the Louis Vuitton store. But what made Lena's pulse spike wasn't just the man himself. It was the fact that Tong Liya was walking beside him, holding a slim Dior bag, her long beige coat swaying gently with each step. The subtle but obvious closeness. They weren't clinging to each other, yet there was a magnetic pull between them that anyone within 10 feet could feel. Jerry's hand occasionally brushed against the small of her back as they navigated the crowd, a protective gesture so subtle you'd miss it if you blinked. Tong Liya wore minimal makeup, her natural beauty glowing under the warm lights. Every time she looked at Jerry, her lips curved into that small, knowing smile, the kind you only reserve for someone who knows your soul. Lena fumbled with her phone, pretending to check messages while recording a short video. In it, Jerry could be seen leaning toward Tong Liya, saying something that made her laugh softly. It wasn't loud, but the way she tilted her head toward him, almost resting it against his shoulder, told a story all on its own. The watch shop moment. The couple soon drifted into a Swiss watch boutique. Through the glass window, bystanders caught the sight of Jerry trying on an elegant Patek Philippe while Tong Liya stood beside him, her fingers grazing the watch as if imagining it on his wrist permanently. One eyewitness, a shop assistant named Marco, later recounted to a local magazine. They weren't just shopping. They were connected. She'd adjust the watch on his hand. He'd smile like she'd just handed him the world. Honestly, it was like watching a scene from a romantic drama, except it was real life. Tong Liya then tried on a delicate rose gold timepiece. Jerry's eyes lingered on her wrist longer than necessary, and when she caught him staring, she playfully swatted his arm. The entire exchange was so intimate that one couple outside the shop whispered, "They're definitely not just friends." A coffee break that felt like a date. After browsing a few more stores, they settled into a corner table at a quiet Swiss cafe overlooking the snowy streets. Jerry ordered a cappuccino, while Tong Liya opted for a chamomile tea. A fan sitting 2 tables away captured a blurred yet telling photo. Jerry leaning forward, elbows on the table. His gaze locked entirely on her as if the rest of the world had disappeared. Tong Liya reached for the small slice of chocolate cake between them, but Jerry, in a teasing move, slid it toward himself first. She laughed, her hand lingering on his before he let her take it. It was such a fleeting moment, yet the kind that screamed comfort, familiarity, and years of shared history. The security's gentle shield. By now, whispers were spreading through the mall. Shoppers were texting friends. "Jerry Yan and Tong Liya are here." A few bold fans tried to approach, but their discreet bodyguards, dressed like everyday tourists, politely redirected them. Even so, Jerry waved warmly to a young boy who shyly said hello, and Tong Liya gave the boy's mother a kind smile before moving on. It was clear they weren't in Switzerland for publicity. This was personal. Every step, every look, felt like they were finally living without the weight of having to hide. The exit that broke the internet. As they left the mall, the wind picked up, ruffling Tong Liya's hair. Jerry immediately reached over, tucking a strand behind her ear with a tenderness that made 3 different bystanders gasp audibly. Someone snapped a perfectly timed photo, Jerry mid-smile, Liya looking up at him, and within an hour, that image had over 2 million retweets under the hashtag #JerryLiaSwissVacation. The internet didn't just see 2 celebrities. They saw a real, breathing love story playing out in a snowy Swiss city. The cafe window scene. Jerry Yan and Tong Liya's unspoken language. The cafe they chose wasn't flashy. Tucked into the corner of the Bahnhofstrasse promenade, Café Lindenhof was the kind of place where the smell of freshly ground coffee beans wrapped around you like a blanket, and the low hum of Swiss jazz played softly from an old record player. Outside, snowflakes the size of feathers floated lazily through the icy air, clinging to the window before melting away. Jerry Yan and Tong Liya slid into the corner booth, their shopping bags neatly placed at their feet. The small round table was pressed against the frosted glass, giving them a front-row view of the cobblestone street, where bundled-up couples strolled arm in arm. Tong Liya removed her gloves slowly, fingers pale from the cold. Jerry reached across instinctively, his hands warm, gently wrapping around hers before she could even cup them over her tea for warmth. "You always forget your gloves in winter," he said quietly. His voice a low murmur only she could hear. She smiled, tilting her head. "And you always remember to scold me for it." It wasn't sharp or defensive. It was soft, playful. Like this was a conversation they'd had 100 times before, each repetition deepening its familiarity rather than wearing it thin. The wait time paused. A waitress arrived, placing Jerry's cappuccino in front of him and a steaming cup of chamomile tea in front of Liya. The foam on Jerry's coffee was topped with an intricate chocolate swirl, and Liya's tea released a soothing floral aroma into the air. They didn't rush. They didn't need to. The rest of the cafe faded into the background as they leaned toward each other, speaking in tones just above a whisper. Jerry's fingers traced the edge of his coffee cup absently, but his gaze never left her. "Do you ever think," he began, pausing like he was searching for the right words, "that we've gotten too used to hiding?" Liya looked down at her tea, the steam curling between them. "Maybe. But here," she lifted her eyes back to his, "we don't have to." Jerry's jaw softened. Outside, a group of tourists passed by the window, laughing as they shook snow from their coats, but neither of them turned to look. In that booth, it felt like they were in a bubble where no camera could intrude. Cake game. Between them sat a slice of Swiss chocolate cake, glossy with a thin layer of ganache, topped with a single raspberry. Jerry reached for the fork first, taking a small bite and pretending not to notice her eyes narrowing playfully. "You're going to eat the raspberry, aren't you?" she accused, lips curving upward. He smirked. Maybe. When he leaned forward for another bite, she darted in with her own fork, spearing the raspberry cleanly. The victory lit up her face, and Jerry laughed. The kind of laugh that wasn't just sound, but warmth radiating from his chest. Unbelievable, he said, shaking his head. 10 years, and you're still stealing my dessert. She leaned forward just enough so her knee brushed his under the table. And you still let me. The glances that said everything. Every so often, one of them would glance at the window to make sure no one was recording them. But their eyes always returned to each other, like magnets snapping back into place. There was no exaggerated PDA, no overly rehearsed romance. It was subtler than that. The way Jerry would push her teacup closer when the steam had died down, the way she absent-mindedly adjusted the scarf around his neck without even realizing she was doing it. If a stranger had walked in, they wouldn't have guessed these two were celebrities. They looked like any other couple taking shelter from the cold, savoring the simple intimacy of sitting side by side. The moment that froze in time. Halfway through their drinks, the snow outside intensified, falling in thick sheets. Leah turned toward the window, her breath fogging the glass slightly as she watched the street turn white. Jerry, instead of looking outside, watched her. It was a stolen moment, the kind that photographers spend years trying to capture. Her profile against the winter light, the faint smile that played at her lips, the way the reflection of snow seemed to make her glow. Without thinking, he reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. She looked back at him, and in that instant the space between them disappeared. "What?" she asked softly. "Nothing," he replied, though his eyes told a different story. "Everything." The exit into the cold. When they finally stood to leave, Jerry helped her into her coat, adjusting the collar so it shielded her neck from the wind. She slipped her arm through his as they stepped out onto the street, their breaths mingling in the crisp air. The sound of snow crunching beneath their boots filled the silence, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of quiet only two people completely